Okay, we are recording and live streaming when it is time and you are ready, Mr. Chairman.
Okay,
Other name you might not recognize up there, Andy Campbell,
Mhm.
just jumped on. He's our financial advisor, so you need both in a bond issuance, bond counsel and financial advisor. He'll have a speaking part later.
it is 11 o'clock. With that, we'll call the meeting of the Isabella County Board of Commissioners Finance and Administration Committee meeting to order. We have the approval agenda. Looks like we have quite a few items to go through today. Are there any desired changes or additions to the agenda?
Nothing.
Nope. Okay, with that, we'll move on then to our first item of business, considering approving prime contract change order number 29 with Clark Construction in the net amount.
Back up a little.
Point of order.
Gotta do call to the public.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And approval.
Thank you.
We haven't approved the agenda yet either. Oh, yeah, we did. We just need to do call to the public. Sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Call the public. I anticipated nobody coming up. I shouldn't do that.
Nobody's hands right down.
There is no one online at this time,
All right,
Mr. Chairman.
with that, there'll be an opportunity later in the agenda. So we will move on to our consider approving prime contract change order number 29 with Clark Construction in the net credit amount of $3,779, extending the substantial completion date of the project to January 31st, 2025, and authorize the board chairperson to sign the same. We have Heidi with us this morning from Clark Construction.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Heidi.
As Mr. Jerry Jahinsky mentioned, we have PCCO 29 in the credit of $3,779 in front of you. Buyout that we have remaining is $36,647. Combined buyout contingency is $818,421. We are about 93% complete with construction. So that percentage of the combined is 37% remaining. Going through PCCO number 29, first line item is PCO number 189. This one here is deducting allowances from McGurk and Central Asphalt. And then using some of that to sweep the parking lots, as Crooked Tree is a little cheaper than McGurk. That was before we did the top coat of the asphalt. And that was a credit to the project of $38,095. Next item is PCO number 196. This is for our Willoughby Security Detention Software Management System. Once we were starting to receive these, started putting these in, we found out we didn't have any power and data for these units. All of these are controlled through the Willoughby system management software. So we needed to add that in here. And then to do that, it was a cost of $31,455. That was taken from buyout. Next item is the institutional covers for exposed copper lines. That here we needed to add was $2,235, and that came from buyout. Next item on the list is PCO number 201. This is for in area B, where we had some sheet vinyl cove base. Due to the masonry, the roundness of the block at the corners, the base would not stick to that masonry block. So we changed that out to vinyl base. And with that, it was an ad, or I'm sorry, an ad of $626, sorry. And then the next item here is PCO number 204. This is extending the project schedule to the end of January, January 31st of 2025. And that's just asking for approval on that. There's no cost to the project for Clark or any of the contractors. So this is a credit of $3,779. Any questions?
Questions?
Do we understand why an extension of the substantial completion date is not an add to the contract? Remember, we have a GMP, a guaranteed maximum price with Clark. So the fact that this is taking longer doesn't affect the cost to Clark, right? Or our cost to cover for Clark. That
Okay.
GMP stays the same. That's why all of these are zero on this change order. That GMP stays the same even with the extension of the substantial completion date. But the board obviously has to approve that as part of a change order. You can't just extend the project out.
Mhm. If I remember, the sheriff has got his own schedule in mind and when he's gonna be able to move the occupants from the current facility over the new one, so don't know exactly what the impact is on the operation, but it may be minor, but understand there was some significant changes and it takes a while to mobilize, get the new materials and get them on board to get them installed, so.
And I feel like this change, I mean, we've talked with Sheriff, right? I feel like this change fits in well with his plan to train before his guests are moved.
That is correct. So we are planning to do a soft turnover with the sheriff and their team in January. While we are finalizing, and get our final inspections, we're gonna start training on the security system. The contractor Accurate Controls will be on site here to work with his staff hand in hand, so that way they have probably roughly a month or so to get familiar with the building, get familiar with the systems here and how they operate and work, because it's definitely different from where they are currently. Getting comfortable with all the cameras on site, understanding how all the Willoughby plumbing fixtures for the detention side all work. So that we are going to work with them during that time. We also have worked with the inspectors, the local inspectors here to make sure that furniture to not incur any additional costs or storage of them or like trying to, delay ordering or anything like that. We worked with them so they can install furniture the mid of January. And the inspectors all were good with that. So we made sure to get that all taken care of too. So we will have a plan working together. And so that way there is no, it's easy transition for the sheriff and their team.
Okay,
Heidi, it's Mike Ferber. I have a question, just a reaffirmation question. Is that correct that Jeff, your superintendent, will stay on beyond the January date to assist the user, in this case, of course, the sheriff's department, to get familiar and make sure that everything works smoothly at no additional charge to the county?
Yeah, that's part of this, January as well, to make sure that everything is working properly and that they have time to work with it. But yes, if there's any issues that come up or anything like that, the clerk will be available.
Okay, thank you.
That's really helpful. Remember, I don't know if you'll recall, back in the very early days of the project, we decided not to hire a commissioning agent. It was gonna be like a six-figure salary paid to a person to kind of help get all these systems online and started. We didn't do that because we felt that there was enough coordination between the contractors and Clark that would happen. So that I just want to point that out. We are saving six figures by not having that person, but obviously rollout of getting things turned on and coordinated is a long roll and a long road.
and the technical aspects of that building, it's a challenge.
Likened to a hospital.
Yep.
Very much so.
I will then move the consideration of approving prime contract change order number 29 with Clark Construction in the net credit amount of $3,779 and also to extend the substantial completion date of the project to January 31st, 2025 to the work session next Tuesday. Been moved and supported. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Okay, it moves forward.
Thank you, Heidi.
Thank you, Heidi.
Thank you.
Ready? The next item, consider adopting the notice of intent bond resolution 2024-16, declaring official intent to issue limited tax general obligation bonds for the Isabella County Administration building complex renovation project in a net amount not to exceed $11 million and authorize the board chairperson to sign the same.
So if I could introduce, we do, to help us through this, you may recognize bond counsel Eric McLaughlin from the Dickinson Wright firm and Andy Campbell as financial advisor. Andy is now with Benzinski and Company, Municipal Finance Advisors. So what we talked about for a while, notice of intent, remember, is the first necessary step in borrowing. A long time ago, we estimated an $11 million project to renovate the county administration building. This would set that amount as a ceiling, not to exceed that amount. If the project would go over that amount, it would be up to the commissioners' leadership to find other funding for that, okay? One thing you'll hear, I think, bond counsel talk about is this notice of intent, this necessary first step. You know, we know once this is approved and published, it starts a 45-day referendum period that the voters have a right to petition that this project go to a vote rather than simply a vote of the board. One thing I think is important to mention, if you go through approval of the notice of intent, we publish the notice of intent, we have a successful 45-day referendum period. There's nothing that forces the board to borrow this money. This just puts it in place so that once you get through the design phase, you agree on that, the money can be there to get going on construction, okay? So I know there was some talk yesterday about this is locking us in. All it does is set that ceiling and allow us to borrow. It doesn't lock us in or force us to borrow. So with that, Eric and Andy, please take it away.
Thank you, Nicole. Chair, members of the committee, thank you for having me again today. That was a wonderful introduction by Nicole. I agree with everything that she just said. It's all very correct and good explanation of this resolution. As we go through the process and get through the design process and collect the bids on the project and are able to more appropriately size the project in terms of the bond issue, there will be a second opportunity for the committee and the board to weigh in on a formal bond authorizing resolution, which will set the parameters within which the bonds can be issued and sold. And at that time, that will be the formal authorization of the issuance of the bonds. As Nicole said, this is not the issuance of the bonds. This is a state law required procedural step in order to obtain authority to issue the bonds. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to field them now and answer them right now.
Any questions?
None for me, sir. Nope.
I don't have any questions. I think we're somewhat familiar with the correctional facility project on the process, and we know the procedural requirements.
Financial advisor Andy Campbell is on, and Andy was really the one to help us with trying in our budget going forward. We had to build in a representative amount. What might it cost to borrow this $11 million? Obviously, a few factors involved in that. Length of the borrow, what's the going interest rate. But as you know, we settled on an annual amount of $750,000 that we do have built into the general fund budget to make this annual payment on the $11 million borrow. A few things have happened since then. We spoke in finance. It's been probably a couple months ago now that our bond rating did go backwards, right? That went down. So that could hurt us on the interest rate for this borrow. I don't know if Andy or Eric would want to. It's probably more appropriate for Andy to speak to that if you would want to.
Yeah, I can a little bit here. So this process is going to be slightly different. Well, pretty different actually than the jail process. So the jail process was done through USDA Rural Development, which is a federal government agency. This project is not eligible for that. So first off, we couldn't do that again, but also this process will be much quicker in terms of the timing, and there's not red tape of going through federal government. It's what's called a competitive bond sale process. So anybody that wants to buy the bonds can bid on them, and the county is required by law to take the best financial option as long as they're a qualified entity that will act on the bond issue, and we've never had an issue with that. But so the county does have full authority to structure the bonds how they desire in terms of the budget that Nicole talked about. The rating it is what it is on that side. I mean, it's not going to affect it too much, honestly. It's going to, I mean, obviously the better the rating, the better the interest rate, but it's not going to be a huge thing where you're going to have a 1% difference or something. It's going to be a 0.05 or 0.1% maybe difference, but overall the market is very calm and stable right now. We still have some time to the bond sale, but we're in pretty good shape to meet the budget and sell the bonds on the current timetable.
So I don't know, the feds have been cutting interest rate. I don't know how that impacts bonds, and if there's gonna be additional cuts assumed possibly in the future, if that would affect, it would have to be the near future, I would think. Are we still really in line to be able to look at an $11 million return on the bond?
Yeah, so the Fed overnight rate cuts do filter into municipal debt. A lot of it is actually priced in beforehand because obviously they kind of know what the Fed's going to do. But interest rates have gone down slightly as the Fed has cut their interest rates slightly. So that has already been priced into the market. I mean, right now, the 11 million, I mean, we will be able to hit the budget in terms of like structuring that. 11 million over 30 years is estimated to be like very comfortably estimated to be like $700,000 payments per year. So we won't have an issue in 30 years, just so you know, is the maximum term that you can borrow for this project. But so we won't have an issue of structuring it into your annual budget. We'll work with Nicole, Melissa, and the team on making sure that we have the yearly budgets allocated correctly. And does that mean we can do 27 years or 28 years or whatever, or how that kind of changes as we get closer to the bond sale? The bond sale is estimated to be, at least right now, it's going to be February 5th. That can move a little bit depending on the market, but as long as the market remains stable between now and then, we do anticipate to sell in early February.
Thank you. Other questions?
Not for me, sir.
Would
Thank
you-
you very much.
Yes, thank you very much, gentlemen. Would you like to make the motion, Commissioner Embry?
Move to take consideration for adopting the notice of intent bond resolution number 2024-16, declaring official intent to issue limited tax general obligation bonds for the Isabella County Administration Building Complex renovation project in the net amount not to exceed $11 million. And authorize the board chairperson to sign the same to our work session Tuesday night.
I'll support that. It's been moved and supported to consider move the consideration of the notice of intent forward to our work session. Any further discussion?
I just want to make sure, I know there were some concerns expressed yesterday from commissioners about this action, so I just want to make sure that the answers that we've given lend comfort to those concerns. I want to make sure there's complete understanding. So.
I understand this. I do have some additional questions about the project in total, but not to this aspect.
Okay, perfect.
Hearing no further discussion, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. It moves forward. Next then, move to the number 6. Consider approving the engagement letter with Benzinski and Company Municipal Finance Advisor for Isabella County Administration Building Complex renovation project, and authorize the board chairperson to sign the same.
So this is, these next two items are necessary to engage on each bond issuance. You would have an engagement letter with your financial advisor and with your bond counsel. So this first one is for financial advisors through Benzinski. This amount for the financial advisors is spelled out in there.
$37,850.
You've got it, 37,850. It's a flat fee. And it includes all out-of-pocket expenses, meeting attendance, mileage, et cetera. It's paid at the closing of the bonds, and Andy, please correct me if I'm wrong, that fee will be paid out of bond proceeds?
Correct. It can be paid out of cash or bond proceeds at the county's choosing.
So generally, it's not a,
Generally, it's rolled into the bond costs, like the overall project of the $11 million costs.
if the board would choose not to do that, is there a time frame by which time the board would want to decide that?
We need to know it by the bond sale date, just if, in terms of, not necessarily our fee, but like if you want to change the amount of the bond sale, preferably a week before or so, but no later than the bond sale date. If you say, hey, we only need 10,750,000 now or something, because we want to contribute some cash, we would want to know that about a week before the bond sale. No later than the bond sale day if you do want to contribute cash and pay for some of it out of pocket.
Thank you for the explanation on the timeline. Very clear.
Okay, do you have anything to add?
I can just give a simple explanation. Nicole kind of just covered it, but we have the same team that we did before. Realistically, I mean, it's a lot of my team transferred with me to the new company. The reason that we moved to the new company was purely to continue our operations on bonds and rates that I've been doing for 12 years. So it's essentially the same team. We combined with another company that was formerly a competitor and doing the same exact stuff we were doing before, just with a different company name.
And a company we worked with in the past.
Okay. I will move the consideration of approving the engagement letter with Benzinski and Company Municipal Finance Advisors for the Isabella County Administration Building Complex Renovation Project to the work session next Tuesday. Support. It's been moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. It moves forward. Next item. Consider approving the engagement letter with Dickinson Wright PLLC for the Isabella County Administration Building Complex Renovation Project and authorize the board chairperson to sign the same. So,
Their fee for Dickinson Wright is set up, it's structured a little differently. They've got a $0 to $2 million borrow. Their fee is 1% of the amount of bond proceeds with a minimum of 10,000. We're obviously well above that with 11 million. So in that range, they do a flat fee of 20,000 plus the a 1/4% of the amount of the bond beyond the first 2 million. Basically, it's 20,000 for the first 2 million, and then a 1/4% for 9 million in this case. Eric, I come up with 42,500 in that regard, plus expenses not to exceed $500, I believe. Is there anything, Eric McLaughlin, you would like to add to that about your engagement letter?
Nope, your calculation is correct if the bond proceeds total 11 million. So you're correct about that.
so the total cost be over 60,000, the 20 and the 40?
No, the 42.5 would be inclusive of the initial 20,000.
Okay. Okay.
That's correct.
Yes, 42.5 plus expenses not to exceed 500.
Plus.
And again, same as the conversation we had with Andy, most generally, these costs are rolled into the bond. It's not like we make an extra payment on top of, but we can choose to do that if you would want to take that out of the bond issuance. Saves a little money up front if you've got the cash to do it.
Okay. Would you like to make the motion on that?
Again, thank you very much, sir. Appreciate it. Move to take consideration for approving the engagement letter with Dickinson Wright PLLC for the Isabella County Administration Building Complex Renovation Project to our work session Tuesday night.
Is there I'll support that. It's been moved and supported to move the consideration of the engagement letter with Dickinson Wright P LLC, the Isabella County Administration Complex Renovation Project, to the work session next Tuesday. Is there any further discussion?
Nope.
Hearing none? Well, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. It moves forward.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Item number 8, consider entering into a contract for construction management services with Spence Brothers for the Isabella County Administration Building Complex Renovation Project and authorize the board chairperson to sign the same.
Oh, yeah, made the motion.
So,
So I do know that Micah has joined us on Zoom from Spence Brothers, and I'll just maybe preface this by saying that, you know, Spence Brothers came on early in the process after we started working with Spicer Group. Spence Brothers have just in the last couple of years put on a new roof on the county administration building for us. They were familiar with that facility and its systems. They actually helped us with the asbestos abatement contractors and trying to determine, you know, what wasn't going to be a waste of time or money moving forward, which was nice. Spence Brothers was considered one of the preferred partners of Spicer Group. So when it became necessary to start putting cost estimates to these ideas we were coming up with, Spence Brothers was great to have at the table. Our procurement policy says we can procure professional services without non-competitive means. Spence Brothers really came to the table. They've proven themselves and certainly been helpful. If we were to go out to bids at this point for another construction manager, I do believe it would set the project timeline back. We would still be on the hook with them for the pre-construction services that they've provided thus far, which is at this point $26,500. That's the contract you have before you right now. And that's what, if you approve this today, that's what we would be responsible for with Spence. This is not a contract with Spence Brothers for an $11 million project yet. That comes later in a change order for the GMP, just like we did with Clark. If you remember the initial contract with Clark Construction on the jail, I think was maybe 1.1 million, and the first change order was a $41+ million change order. That's how you do that. You have a contract first, and then once the design is worked out and you're comfortable with that, then the notice of intent period satisfied, then you can go forward with that GMP amendment. I don't want to get into too much more before giving Micah certainly the opportunity to weigh in here. This is your story and I'm telling it. So
right. Well, honestly, you couldn't have really told it any better. You hit all my talking points. You know, I was going to mention the roof and pre-construction, and that is how these CM contracts work. We're brought on board. We're brought on board for pre-con, and then agreed upon fee of cost of construction once the design is done and it is competitively bid out to subcontractors. So that's what you have in front of you right now.
okay. So I'm going to take this opportunity to ask some questions. I don't have any problem with the contract. We have an obligation to our contractors. They've done an excellent job, both Spicer Group and Spence Brothers. But I'm really concerned about whether or not we're going to be able to afford the project. I know we have the $11 million that we've been talking about in terms of bonding. I think you've done a good job of bringing the costs down another couple $1 million. I think when we got the cost estimate back in October, that did not include a Sally Port or jail annex, correct? The original cost estimate for the project.
So the original estimate did not. We actually did not even really know about the jail yet. The one that we looked at in the last meeting a couple weeks ago, that did hold a placeholder for the jail work. We didn't really know the extent of it yet, but I knew the square footage, and I put in a reasonable cost per square footage for renovation, just so there was an earmark in there for it, and it wasn't a $0 line item. Since then, Spicer has drawn up some conceptual drawings of what we'd be doing at that jail, and we went through and did a full budget exercise. And the most recent one, which Nicole, I don't know if they have that in front of them right now or not, but the most recent one has a more accurate budget in there for the jail work, and then the Sally Port work as well as a separate cost as well.
And that's the one that's reflected on the November, when we got in November.
The one we should have got last.
Yes,
Yeah, just got.
yes, that is correct.
So I'm still trying to add up all the costs to see if we're gonna be able to afford the project. And I know we're looking at 9.7 million just for the project cost. That does not include architectural fees, engineering fees. What's the MEP design? That's
That's mechanical engineering,
okay.
mechanical and electrical.
Or design reimbursables. I know those are a little bit smaller, but those are important pieces of the puzzle that we don't have any estimates on right now. Also, I know the project manager fees need to be included in that. We have moving costs, AV systems. We're still looking at ballistic glass because of being on the first floor. Those are all, when I add those all up, it comes to be more than $11 million. And my concern is if we go over that, we have to come up with it. We don't have the money to come up with it.
So Mike, are those things that you just heard Commissioner Jałoszynski speak about, those are built in or those are not built in?
Those are not. So the architect, the design fees, architect, engineering, all that is not under us in this project. It's a separate contract with you guys. If this was the design build, we'd be carrying those. I don't know what Spicer's fee is, so you guys would have to add that in there.
May I interject? Nicole, correct me if I'm wrong. Dave was talking about $60,000 or in that range to complete the documents. Do you have any recollection?
The number I've been working with for Spicer, I think is closer to 162 for the whole project.
Yeah, I'm just saying that what was not known before. So for Jerry and the other board members' benefit, I think we're looking at a $160,000 figure that Spence Brothers does not have in their overall estimate.
Yep.
And that would include all of the architectural and civil MEP design.
Yes.
Worked in for that 160.
Yep.
Okay.
Yes, I don't think the numbers is unknown as what you fear on there.
I just haven't seen anything, and when you don't see anything, you know, your fears run away with you.
Sure.
Questions.
Sure.
I know I voiced some of this in an email, and you did respond, and I got good information back from a couple of people, but the jail, we got the cost for the jail as an option. If we don't go with that option, it means we have to accommodate storage within our current building. And I know we have a huge, heavy storage unit for the courts right now in the lower level. And you had indicated that the cost of the jail annex option, that was the 1 million, almost 1.8. Yep. But you said the cost to remodel another floor is approximately 2.2. Are we talking about remodeling so we have 3 floors, or being able to do 2 floors and white box the lower floor?
I believe what I was saying there was pointing out on the budget that you received yesterday, the jail annex as an alternate, right? The 9.7 million is is 2 floors, right? And right now it's first and second floor of the county building. The jail annex, 1.8 million roughly, was to renovate the western portion of the existing jail. But what you don't see on here as an alternate, which Mike, I think in our original budgets, I'm doing this from memory, but I think it was around 2.2 million to finish, say, the 3rd floor.
But
Yes, that's what it was to fully finish it. If you were fully fitting it out like you are the first and second, you
Yeah.
wouldn't, if you're just doing, I guess at that point it would be storage. And if you're not doing the jail, you would need a place for storage and for facilities. You would need to carve out some space on that upper floor for them. That wouldn't be the full 2.2. I don't know exactly what it would be because that's not a study that any of us have done yet, but it would be, the problem with putting the storage on the 3rd floor is it's high density. The floor is not currently rated to hold that kind of weight, so we'd have to reinforce it from underneath. David from Spicer and myself did talk about that last week briefly, about what it would take to reinforce the underside of that floor to make it acceptable to hold that kind of weight. And I don't think we're really talking huge dollars to do so. But then the other problem you face is facilities is a heavy equipment and material in and out department. You're talking tools and materials and pulling a door and bringing it up, all that stuff up at the elevator is less than ideal.
so my point in this is not to think about white boxing the 3rd floor. I've always proposed that we use the 2nd and 3rd floor for our housing of our offices and use the bottom floor for the white box, but we've never had a proposal. We've never had a design that dealt with the 2nd and 3rd floor with the white box of the 1st floor or cost estimate to do that. And I'm looking, is there a way of saving money and getting a little additional space by doing that? I mean, we've been so focused on using that 1st floor, which to me was never really something I favored. So I'm just throwing that out there. We're going to need to find some way to do all this with the money that we have. And that's another option. And it might get us a better design for all the offices, elected officials and department heads.
I think when we started down that conversation, there was talk of, well, that's gonna cost Spicer more, right? Because it's kind of going back to the drawing board, tongue in cheek there, literally. And I think this group, I think leadership believes if it costs a little more to get it right, that's fine. I don't feel like any of us in this room are thinking, well, we started to design it this way, it's gotta be this way. So I think there's still time to work that way, to work through that. I think there's reasons I think Micah could speak to, I think David could speak to in terms of why we're doing 1st and 2nd, not 2nd and 3rd at this point, but money has dictated this, and so that's what's guided the idea of using the existing jail facility. But if that doesn't make good sense or good financial sense.
Well, by not doing that, if we can accommodate, we don't have to go in that direction. If we can accommodate on the 1st floor, all the storage and the like, and get away from that ballistic glass, and which is a heavy expense, I think we need to look at it because we're running out of money for this project, and I can't piece together when you add up all the things that aren't included, I can't get below $11 million.
And I believe, Micah, correct me if I'm wrong, if we go down this route and, we're designing, I think, well, and David too, I think the directive becomes keep this under 11 million, and it's, you're the professionals and what we need to do to keep it at that $11 million cost, right? Some of those office walls go, maybe there's more common meeting areas instead of meeting areas in individual offices. Designs like
May I comment on everything that was said so far?
Of course.
if you look at the current numbers that Spence Brothers came up with, we are looking at $11.5 million, rough numbers. What we should not ignore, though, is I consider at a conservative estimate between the construction manager and owner contingency. Right now, we have $1.5 million. So really, we're looking at a $10 million project and $1.5 million in contingency. In other words, uncommitted monies. I have another comment, which this is with our meetings with David, and all we're presenting here is that the current design is the lowest cost. Now, there are several options. You as the county as the owner, you want to be on the third and second floor for all the administrative departments, fine. But also on the lower level, the first floor, which makes sense to have the maintenance department, there are some things that would have to stay there, and it will drive up the cost. And also the latest on the structural thing, this is for Micah, at least I'm quoting what David said, based on the configuration, because they are composite floor, and we were dealing with kips and different loadings, and which we don't, you're not expected to be experts on it, but I disagree that it would be a relatively simple matter to reinforce the third floor. So I really don't think that we should consider the third floor for the maintenance department, especially as Micah said again, of moving heavy equipment and the loads in and out of there. So the option of going to the third floor and second floor as offices and first floor for the support functions, it's doable, but it's not the most expensive. I mean, but the least expensive. On the other hand, I think we have a conservative estimate right now. I know you're driving, Michael, so I don't want to get into any details. But what I would like to ask you is to really look at that $1.7 million figure, because the latest sketch or initial design I saw from David, it's a really simple space, and I scratch my head. I be honest, I don't know where the $1.7 million comes from. So it's I know you don't have it in front of you, but it's one of my questions.
So the million, you're talking about the $1.7 million in various contingencies, I assume?
Yes.
There's a couple different things that make that up. Really three. There is the owner contingency, which I think we're at 10%,
Yeah,
which
10%.
is a very
you have it
standard.
at 10%. Yeah.
0.1 million.
But that's a very standard contingency for a remodel. The other two we have in there, one is an estimate, what we call an estimate contingency, because this is not a fully designed project. This is a conceptual level design. And in our expertise, we know that when it goes from conceptual to construction documents, there's going to be things added in there that were not accounted for in our conceptual budget. So that's what we set aside that percentage for, is to make up for what wasn't in the budget when wasn't accounted for. And then the third one is escalation contingency. Because at the time of doing the budget to the time when we actually go to construction, there's going to be a time lapse. And construction costs only go up during time. So that's accounting for the cost of construction today at the time of the budget versus the anticipated cost of construction at the time of actually building. So those are the three things that make it up. And they're all very standard multipliers, percentage multipliers we use in a remodel situation. To touch on your other point, it is a conservative budget. You're always going to get a conservative budget from us at conceptual level. I would rather be too high than too low.
Right.
I would tell you that a conceptual budget versus hard dollar bids are going to be within 20 to 30%, possibly less. But yes, you are right. There is a conservative level to this budget.
Michael, it's not criticism. I'm just trying to put Jerry's concerns to bed about being over the $11 million. I think working with you and David and the actual market, once you're out for bids, I have a very high degree of confidence that we can make this budget.
So do I.
I just wanted to follow along the same line as Micah. In my conversations with David and with Micah, I know I want to back up just a minute. I know I did talk with Micah briefly after our most recent meeting, and I did ask them what his feeling was on whether or not we could get this project in under $11 million. And again, I don't want to speak for you, Micah. I know I came away from that conversation feeling like this could happen. And then when I saw the numbers that you sent to us yesterday that I received in my email, you've accomplished that. So I wanted to say thank you for helping at least work that part of it through. And I know you tend to want to do what I do, which is overpromise and underdeliver,
Yeah,
Right?
Yeah, well.
right? In this case, you
Your
went,
promise over delivers.
yeah, I want to over, yeah. So in this case, it's the other way around. But again, I know you wanted to overestimate to a certain extent, and I appreciate that. Again, this design that you guys, I talked to you about this design that you have put together gives us the best possibility of getting this administration building back up and running for the least amount of money, is my understanding, and I think you agree with that, and I think David agrees with that. So I'm very confident that we can make this work. We still have some work to do to bring this cost down. I know we did talk about, we have talked about the fee involved, and I forgot what it was called.
Construction management.
Yeah, the construction management fee that Mikos brought up. I know that was something we do need to talk about. But I believe in overall big, broad picture, I do believe that we can get this project done for under $11 million. So
I agree.
that's where I stand.
So do I.
Okay,
So
go ahead.
my concern was being locked into a certain design at this point, and Mr. Ferber alleviated those concerns for me. We're not locked into a final design. I share the vice chairman's concern that we should be using second and third for offices, the lower floor for facilities and storage, and deleting the old jail renovation. So I guess I would like to see that as an alternate, see what kind of money we're talking about.
So again, I'm not going to speak for these two gentlemen, but I'm sure they're going to agree with me. Once you go down that road, you're going to go from an 11.6 million total with everything to over 12 million. I can almost guarantee you that's where you're going to end up by doing what you guys are talking about. Mike, am I at least close?
Yeah, I would agree, because it's not as simple as white boxing the first floor, and David might be able to speak even further to this than I can, but your building systems, the heartbeat of your building, the electrical service, the plumbing service, the gas service, your heating, your cooling, everything comes from that first floor. So it's not like we can just say, okay, we're white boxing the first floor and doing virtually nothing there. No, there are renovations that have to happen on that first floor, regardless of if you're using it or not. So you're going to take, it's not as simple as taking the costs that are in there for the first floor and just moving them to the third. You'll move some of them to the third, but some of them are going to have to stay behind in the first.
Right.
So again, my feeling is this. We're not a county flush with money. Again, we're talking about making changes that cost more money for our taxpayers. I'm struggling with this, guys, and I'm not trying to be disrespectful, and I know when you're trying to do the best thing you can for the people who are gonna be working in the building. I get that part, but at some point in time, we've got to say, enough's enough. We need to say, this is how much we're gonna spend. Dave and Micah have worked very hard to get us into a position where this is the best possible scenario with the least amount of cost to get us into a newly renovated administration building. If you want to go beyond that, that's your prerogative, but that does not look good. I don't want to be a part of that. I don't want to go into the taxpayers and saying, guess what? We're going to spend another $750,000 on this project, or $500,000.
And I don't think that's coming from us. My thought is, we have never had that option looked at.
Right.
So we don't have that information in our mind
Right.
to know what that difference in cost is.
Right.
At the same time, we know we have department heads and elected officials aren't happy with the design because for one reason or another,
Right.
and they may have to just go with it.
Right,
But
but
we're trying to
You
come
got-
up with the best project.
you've got 3 experts there.
Right, that works,
That I-
for us.
that I-
That
that I'm-
works for us.
That, again, I will default to them at every opportunity, because they are telling us exactly what they believe. If they wanted us to spend more money, it would behoove them to drive this thing up to 12 and a half, $13 million. They're making a fee, they're making their money, but they are trying very hard on our behalf to give us the best possible solution for the least amount of money. This design and price that we have now is about as close as we're gonna get. There's still room, I still strongly believe, and I would push very hard for a little more value engineering and the fees associated with this project. I think we can bring that down. There's some opportunity here to bring it down even further. That's the direction I think we should be focused on, in my opinion.
So
So,
we should definitely focus on that. But I think some harder numbers on what Jerry and I are talking about would help us make that decision. And it's not just Jerry and I, it's a couple other commissioners as well. So if we could just see something with some firmer numbers and be able to compare, because you do have the delete of the old jail project at 1.7. I'm hearing some rough numbers that it's still gonna cost, even after deleting that part, it still costs a little more to do what we're
2.2.
talking about. But if we had something a little more solid to look at, to compare, that'll help us make that decision. I don't disagree with anything you said, but I think we need we need a little bit more to look at before we make that decision.
Well, and it's kind of how we started, right? We
Mhm.
started with looking at all 3 floors and the dollar amount was too large. So we do have the experts, we do have the professionals, they do work for us. So if the dictate is do all 3 floors and keep it at 11 million, you've got the professionals here to show us what that looks like. I guarantee David won't turn on his camera because doesn't want me to see his face right now, maybe, but I guarantee there's a way to do all 3 floors at 11 million. Not a lot of people are gonna be happy, maybe,
Well-
with that design, but if that's your dictate,
I
Well,
don't
the
think
people
we're
that work
saying
for you
do all
don't
3
have it.
floors. You're saying all 3 floors. I'm saying 2 floors, but 2 different floors. We don't have that information to make the decision. We're doing it in a kind of a fog, I guess is the best way to put it.
and
We're not looking to increase the cost. We're looking to come up with a good project that's gonna serve the people for the longest period of time. I do have a question too on the Sally port. Why do we need a new Sally port? Why not the old Sally port, use the old method to get into the? I
that's
don't
why it
understand.
was an alternate.
Huh?
That's why it was built as an alternate. It's not necessary, it's not part of the project. It was an alternate in case we do want a new sailor port. That was the original idea of the project a few years back. It was one of the first things taken out from the correctional facility project. But we can use the existing Sally port for years to come, is my understanding.
What was the idea there? Is that the new one would be closer to the tunnel over the
I
courthouse?
think functionally, yeah.
Yeah, the new one would be closer to the court. Currently, they would have to transition through that building to get to the court. And it was just, if the new Sally port was in that location, and oddly enough, if you look at the original drawings for the for the jail, that Sally Port is actually shown in that location.
Okay. Mr. Chair. Well, we'll cut to the chase. The thing is, you have 3 people who are going to bring these numbers to you. They're already telling you it's going to be substantially more, $500,000 to $1 million more to do what you're asking to do. So you're saying this and you want to see the hard numbers, and I get that part, that you feel like it's a fog. I like Micah, Dave, and Nikos, we are, I believe, all in agreement that when you get to where you have all these numbers in front of you, you're going to be right where we are now, which is we should move forward this project as is. This is our best case scenario and at least expensive scenario. So
I agree with Chris. There's one other thing I want to throw in. Micah briefly referred to it, and just to give you an order of magnitude, this will take time. And one way to look at it with inflation, none of us like it, but it's real. To give you an idea, for every month of delay will cost us about $50,000 in rough terms on the average due to money we lose to inflation. In other words, I heard the bond people say that we can sell the bond, say, early February. And then in order to start the construction in earnest, and it's already, we're in mid-November, holidays are coming. And I was hoping, again, I'm just giving you my advice. I was hoping that we can start construction in January. It seems less and less likely. And David, you can tell the commission how much time it would take to, again, redesign to the 3rd, 2nd, and part of the 1st floor based on what the commissioners would like to see, and then have Micah price it again. I think we're gonna lose 1.5, maybe 2 months.
Possibly even more, depending on how long it takes, because we're not fully designed yet. We are conceptually designed. So it's
Right.
Spicer to put together solid bid documents. And if we're stepping backwards from that to do another set of conceptual, yeah, you could lose 4 months.
Well, that's another $200,000, gentlemen, just due to inflation.
Well, you
Okay.
can't get in front of your notice of intent timeline, right? That is set, hopefully next Tuesday you'll approve it, we'll publish it, 45 days. You can't get out in front of that, so that bond timeline really does.
it's only a month and a
dictate.
half.
Mhm.
Okay, let me just run the figures in my mind then. We're looking at, and the bids may actually come in less, and we have some contingency worked in there, but let's say we use the contingency. So we're looking at 9.7 for the construction, another $160,000 for all the engineering documents.
1.8 for the
We
jail.
have construction management fees. We will have to go with the jail annex then, which is an
Yes.
estimated almost 1.8. We don't have to go with the Sally Port. That still puts us over the $11 million, and we haven't moved anything back. We don't have anything for the AV system, and that doesn't include the ballistic gas.
But it
So
does include the.
We don't have to go with the Sally Port, it's an alternate. And again, I just want to mention to you, there's very healthy contingency, both for the CM and the owner, is in excess of $1.5 million.
So we're at 11.66 with a $1.5 million contingency approximately, gentlemen.
Plus
Yes.
our 1.1 of ARPA sitting over
Right,
here
1.1 ARPA.
that we've committed to the HVAC project in this building. I talked about in the staff report, one of the ways we might be able to obligate that contractually by the end of the year is do a long lead item amendment with Spence Brothers on the contract potentially, right? So that we could lock in the purchase of some of these HVAC components that gives us a contractual obligation by the end of the year of which to, commit those ARPA dollars to this
So,
project.
I was gonna look at your memo too, because I had some questions on that. We're looking now at the revenue side. We know we can bond for 11, and the ARPA would bring us up to 12.1. You made something about 600,000 in grant funding requested. Now, it's not money in the bank, right?
Correct, yep.
But
it's
what is that?
requested. That is, for 2 grants through Eagle. One was for $100,000 towards heat pump and another was 500,000 towards, further asbestos removal.
Hmm.
So taking out those window panels that have that asbestos film in them.
Which the
Yeah.
current budget includes, taking out the rest of this.
Yes, but it
Correct.
doesn't include the potential of those grants, you know, so that's not money in the pocket, but it's possible. The other thing we have now in hand or soon in hand is the 375,000 from the Renewable Ready.
But those
Award.
dollars would be for additional things that would not be in
It's
this
almost
project.
correct.
So
It's
it's a
almost like a
wash on that
side
one. We can't
on the
include
side.
those.
Yes, however, I would mention that, you know, Spicer has set up some meetings with some solar, suppliers. And we're looking at probably a 7-year return on investment on that rooftop panels.
Nice.
For an award, right? An award dollars that we get a 7-year payback on because in part because of the Inflation Reduction Act and the monies that we'll get through cash payment as long as we fill out our tax form.
But so those dollars we can't really account for this project. There'd be something
Correct.
down, which would be a
Correct.
benefit. It'd be
Correct.
great to go with it.
Correct.
And then the final thing you mentioned, something about unspent contingency for the sheriff's office or correctional facility. Can you do that legally? Because we're charging that against the bond, getting bond payments back. I mean,
Well, the contingency is on our side. Yes, we're borrowing the 41.5 from USDA. That'll all get borrowed, that'll all apply to the project, but remember, it's a $48 million project. We've always had that ledger on the USDA side and the ledger or on Clark Construction side and on our side. We've got contingency in both, right? We just heard from Heidi that contingency still over 818,000, I think is
181.
contingency left on Clark's side. We still have, remember when sheriff comes to talk about furniture, we talk about our side of that ledger and that we have a contingency on that side too. I feel like it's, let's say 741,000, sticks in my mind. That's the contingency on
Just
the
the
Clark side. I
Clark
think it's
side.
closer to
Yeah.
350,000 on our side.
just want to make sure that if we have something on spent, that it somehow can be converted to another
Yeah,
project
so
legally.
the way you have it committed to the jail project, if you will, for our side of the ledger is through commitment of fund balance. So that by board action, you could, if you don't spend it on sheriff's office and correctional facility, you can uncommit it, you can commit it to a different purpose. So that, we just saw the substantial completion dates getting moved out, but that's not affecting the cost of the project. Those contingencies are still there. We're 93% complete. It's not likely for something to come out of the blue to gobble up those contingencies at this point. So there should be some money left on that table.
So while I do appreciate all this other monies that could potentially apply to this project, again, I don't think any of those monies should be utilized to increase the cost, I mean, to do more. I think we have what we need. I think it will work with what we have. I look at 9.7 for the administration building, 1.8 for the jail, 0.16 million for the design. That gets us to 11.66 million, of which we have 1.5 in contingency and 1.1 in ARPA. That brings the cost to $9 million, gentlemen. And to me, that is money spent wisely. Anything over and above that, in my opinion, is money, taxpayer dollars that's not spent wisely. And I'll leave it at that.
We've had a good discussion. Do you have any more comments?
I don't.
Okay, go ahead. I see Commissioner Sweeney's on. I don't know if he has any comments.
I know we were going to. If that conversation is to be had, it has to be had now.
Okay,
Mhm.
so, I know Micah, you brought up a question regarding the fee. 4.5%.
I brought up a question about it.
I'm sorry. Nikos, not Micah, Nikos, you brought that question up.
Yeah, again, representing the, or advising the county, and it, just, again, it's a combination of experience with so-called safety valve. You saw my comments. I think I gave 4 reasons for making the fee a bit skinnier, and it's a matter of negotiations with Spence, and I think at this point it has, in all honesty, has a bit lower priority than for you to make the decision to go ahead or not to go ahead.
But it's stated in the contract, so if it's, if there's discussion that needs to be had about it, it needs to be had now.
Before we can,
Well, yeah, if you, what, for Micah's benefit, what I suggested that the 4.5% should be 3.5%, because of fee, when it comes to construction manager's fee, it's not only the amount, but the time it's made in. And this project is less than a year long, the actual construction. And when I was working for CM or for myself, I looked at my my income on a per month basis, what this project's going to make for me, and I just felt that a 3.5% fee would be more fair than the 4.5%.
thank you, Nikos. Micah.
I give ourselves a haircut. That's between Brian and you. There's nothing I can do about that.
So that's something that would have to be that conversation to be had between now and our board meeting.
Mhm.
Okay.
I
And
can-
Brian will be at the next
Yes,
meeting.
he'll be there.
Yeah.
Yep,
Something, we should have that conversation.
I'll
prior to
prep
that.
it.
Would you prep them?
perfect.
Thank you for getting here so quickly.
I know.
I apologize.
You're on-
So I figured out what happened. When I put this in my calendar for 11 o'clock, I was in Missouri. I was on Central Time. So I put it in for 11 Central, which shows up as 12 Eastern
Sure,
when I'm back. So
Oh,
Thank you for explaining that, because when I, a little after 11, I'm like, Mike is not here and he's not on, and I'm just gonna text him, and I wondered where the noon came from, so that makes
I put it in for 11 Central Time.
perfect sense. That's what you get for.
we could still take
Well, double
consideration for this to our work session.
Oh, yes.
Because we could still have this conversation
Oh, yeah.
regarding the fee.
Oh, yes.
Okay. All right.
So unless there's, I just appreciate the conversation that we've had on the
Yeah.
floor. I mean,
Good.
it answers the questions. I'm a little bit more comfortable with moving. I know it's all gonna come down to, we're gonna get those bid proposals, and as we open those envelopes, we'll find out if we can move ahead with the project or not. With that, I will move the consideration of entering into contract for construction management services with Spence Brothers for the Isabella County Administration Building Complex Renovation Project to the work session next Tuesday.
Support, sir.
It's been moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
It passed. Aye. Any opposition, same sign. None, it passes.
Okay, thank you very
Yeah.
much.
Yes.
I appreciate you.
Sorry, I was late.
So
Getting-
we have
getting
2 minutes
there.
after?
Yeah.
Thanks, sir.
Next item, consider approving the proposed First Amendment to the lease agreement with MRP Properties Company LLC commencing December 1st, 2024, and authorize the board chairperson to sign the same. So this is our lease for our two Pickard properties that currently house many of our departments.
That is correct.
It's a 3% increase over the past lease.
It is. You're doing great.
$6,000.
Yep, it represents about $6,000, which to us was not an amount that would entice us to move again or try to find another place for the next year. You covered it very, very well. We did try to negotiate less than a 3% increase. And the landlord really wasn't interested in that for the 1-year term. If we were looking at longer, they would be more amenable, and certainly didn't anticipate this renewal, certainly not looking at another. So this morning in criminal justice, prosecuting attorney Barbara's office brought forward the lease of his space downtown. That lease was entered into a little earlier than this one. It expires a little earlier, a little sooner. That lease had a 5% renewal built into it for the ensuing year. So those are the terms that he's bringing forward on that space. I think they're still working through what the space will actually look like. It sounds like there's more space available to them there. I don't know at this point if they're seeking that. This lease that I'm bringing forward is just in our same spots. We've got community development, parks, the clerk, the treasurer, the register of deeds, drain commission, administration, equalization, MSU extension in these facilities. My apologies. Facilities in these facilities.
And I would just say that that space is working for now. Might not be ideal, but it's working.
Get the job done.
Also,
It'll suffice.
Would you like to make a motion?
Sure. Move to take consideration for approving the proposed First Amendment to the lease agreement with MRP Properties Company LLC commencing December 1st, 2024 to our work session Tuesday night.
I'll support that. Is there any further discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, same sign. It moves forward. Consider approving the software as a service agreement between River Incorporated and Isabella County in the total amount of $1,710 for personnel document storage software for a 1-year period beginning on October 27, 2024 to October 26, 2025, and authorize the board chairperson to sign the same.
so this seemingly minor expense is pretty actually impactful software. We use it in administration for, it used to be called e-file cabinet, and we keep all of the personnel records electronically in this database now called Rever. Some call it Revere, some call it River. But we buy 3 licenses or 3 seats. They're $570 each. These are for a director of finance, HR specialist, and payroll function that have to all have logins for to access personnel documents. This brings up, hopefully I can have a quick discussion with you guys about this. This seems like a minor cost. It is pretty minor expense in a $22.5 million budget. But when you agree to this invoice or sign this invoice, there's actually terms and conditions that come with it. Anytime there's terms and conditions, our attorney says, no surprise to you, it's to the board signature. This contract in particular and others like it in the past haven't come to the board, maybe because it seemed like insignificant due to the cost, or maybe time-wise it was cumbersome to wait for your cycle, the committees and then the board to get approval. And I've had this same conversation with other directors, but the conversation kind of went like, I don't think the board wants to be inundated with this kind of minutia. And the way around that, if you don't want to be inundated with these types of minor decisions, is to, of course, pass a resolution giving authority maybe to your administrator controller to sign documents of a certain threshold, contracts of a certain threshold. I don't see your agendas being too bogged down, but I know I've brought that to leadership in the past and there wasn't interest in going that route. The board wants to see these types of things, so I bring them forward. I just wanted to have that discussion for your benefit, for the director's benefit, how I've managed it. I think these things, you know, per the advice of the attorney, need to come to you unless you're adopting something that would allow an administrator's hands. Point of, there's nothing to do with the agreement in front of you. The agreement actually is a very simple thing, but it comes with terms and conditions and it has to be approved by this board.
Yeah,
So,
I'm comfortable with how we're doing it now. I don't feel like it's bogging us down excessively. So,
most of our contractual agreements are for a whole lot more. I mean, how many of these minor ones do we have?
Oh. We don't know, because,
So there might be more that are gonna come onto our.
yeah, any of them that has terms and conditions should come. I know in the past, like waste management agreements, you know, where facilities is now bringing those before the board, because there's terms and conditions, and when you send that to the attorney to look at and review, they say, this is fine for signature by the board chair upon approval by the board of commissioners.
Well, it is part of the educational process, isn't it? Otherwise, we don't know. I had not
I would not
known
know.
exactly what software is used for these functions.
right.
Well, it helps pull things together at budget process as well,
Mhm.
sometimes too, why do you need these contractual dollars? Oh, part of it's for that.
In honor of Commissioner Swain being on with us, I don't think it really rises to the level of the Swaney principle, where, you know, it makes us more nimble. And while it make us a little more efficient, I don't know if it really makes us that much more efficient.
To have
And-
your administrator control
Right.
time.
And I know for me, it has been very educational. Now, once you've been here a couple of years and you've seen them come through, it's just redundant after that, I understand. But from the get-go, I thought it was beneficial.
With that, I will make the motion to consider approving the software as a service agreement between River Incorporated and Isabella County in a total amount of $1,710 for personnel document storage software for a one-year period beginning October 27, 2024 to October 26, 2025 to the work session for final act, for additional consideration.
Sport.
It's been moved and supported. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. It moves forward.
Okay.
All right, we'll move to our discussion of the invoice list. The first one is November 1st. See, we have our usual payments. The Acrisure self-insurance for prescriptions. That looks like, are we coming in with a savings expectation on that still?
I think we're more on par.
I know the first one was a shocker, but it seems like they've leveled down.
We're on pace with.
The Preston Community Services, a number of them that we're very familiar with. Are there any questions on the $5,000 plus items?
I see Director Ray is here. Is there any consideration, or are you completely satisfied with Barracuda? It's worked exceptionally well and you're very happy with it, protecting us?
Decryption and protection are our emails.
Very good. Okay.
We have to have something and that's what we chose.
Money well spent then. Thank you, ma'am.
And I didn't have any questions on any of the smaller bills in the background.
Yeah.
Then we don't have any other questions? We'll move on then to the November 8th list. So on the $5,000 bills, plus we have another payment to Clark Construction for the correctional facility, almost $1.5 million. On the others, again, one of the odd one is, we do have the Herrick Park architectural and consulting fees, which is a requirement of DNR grants, so, which I thought is a pretty reasonable fee. And then we have public defender appointments, we have our childcare, payments. Do you have any questions on any of the $5,000 plus bills? The only thing that I had on the internal, the smaller bills, and these are legitimate payments, but I think they're being, we talked about this at a prior finance and administration. We're having contractual labor being assigned to printing and binding. And my assumption, maybe I shouldn't have assumed that, is that there was gonna be a correction so that those payments would be go to contractual labor, and that didn't occur. And I think we need to conform to the Michigan Budgeting and Accounting Act and accurately reflect what the payments are for. And I apologize to Madam Clerk. I didn't think about it because it wasn't really a clerk issue as much as it is a internal accounting issue that we need to make those budget amendments. And is that something we can do before the meeting?
I mean, the budget is there,
To
whether it's
accommodate-
whether the budget is in the printing and binding line, or I move that budget to another line. Her budget is there. She's not, violating any budget.
No, I wasn't
Yeah.
saying there's no
Okay.
violation, but it's
Okay.
being misaccounted for.
Right, and I think the thought on that too was, I hate to use, we've always done it that way, but this has gone through our auditors as well with the Michigan Uniform Accounting and Budgeting Act in mind, where if they, if we had direction from them, a recommendation to say, absolutely, that needs to be moved, that's not being portrayed the right way. So it wasn't, it's just kind of always been that way. I don't think we're in any sort of violation or anything or not conforming, but it can be used if that's something, or it can be changed when talking with the clerk. If that's something that we agree that that she wants to do, we can. It was kind of there more for, she gets a lot of her expenses reimbursed by the state, and more for tracking purposes of anything that goes into that line item that can be reimbursed by the state. There's other items in there as well. Ballots, anything to do with the election, but we can, change that line item if that's something that the clerk wants to do.
I'm sure within a number accounting system that we need to work in, there's some way to do it and even make it easier. I mean, you could put it specifically into I don't know how they're grouped. I know you've got your department, then you've got your next and the next. But to do it so you can get that information out quickly for the reimbursement process, but it needs to be done correctly. That's, I'm not saying, I'm not criticizing it where it's been done in the past. We need to do it moving forward. We need to do it correctly, and we need to do it in a way that maybe helps the clerk also to be able to draw the information out for her reimbursement request,
But we need to do it in a way that does not hold up these payments to the folks that work the election.
Got it, Commissioner.
Mr. Sweeney.
yes, sir.
I just want to make a comment to Melissa's statement that this is the way it's been done in the past. Obviously, this 9-day voting period just started in 2024, and so these payments would have started this year, and would they have actually been reviewed by auditors?
Right. So that payment that is being made, I think,
To election inspector.
right. I mean, I guess you're right. I mean, do it for 9-day early voting, but that same, and maybe Clerk Lux can speak better to it, but I want to say that same, type of work, that same work is being done just for a different election or a different type of piece of an election. But yes, you're right. I mean, the 9-day early voting is new, and but it still has the principle of it is, or what I'm trying to get is that it's the same type of work, just a different.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for the clarification.
Yep. Do you want to come up? Madam Clerk?
I've been researching this and talking to the prosecutor too, and I spoke to some other county clerks. This is 100% an elected official's decision. If I want to break things out, it's not a board of commissioners decision. The budget has already been made. We went through the Uniform Budgeting and Accounting Act, and we have not went against anything in it. I'm not against breaking it down. That's fine. The 9-day early voters or early workers are the same thing as when I hired Michelle and Chris. They all come out of the same thing. We just went back and it's the same thing for 30 years. This has went on. So I don't mind meeting with you. If you think it's easier for you, we're just gonna have to figure out how we do when the state brings the money back in, how we're gonna flow that, because it will be different, because then we're gonna have to pick out the 9-day early voting, which I got this grant for $54,000 for the county. So even the 30,000 that was spent in the 9-day early voting, we have an additional 54,000 back. We have another 54,000 that's coming back in. And then I think August is supposed to hit us and it's about 10,000 that's coming back in too. So we're just gonna have to pick up how you want the money to flow back in. So, but I mean, this is great. It's something I would want to sit down with you if it makes the commissioners happy to figure out how you want to flow these, but I will not break everything down, morning sun and 9-day early voting. And that's way too hard for us to do, because then we're going to also have to sit down and pick out how the state brings the money back in. They paid for the presidential election and that's reimbursed. They paid for the 9-day early vote or workers. So it can be challenging. I'm more than willing to do it. But I'm sorry, I have not had the time. You guys discussed it. I've been running the election, so nothing's been said and done. But in speaking with the election commission too, I'd hate to see these workers not be able to be paid. I don't mind transferring and putting it into a line item. If you want to break it down for 9-day, we can just do contractual or probably contractual, because there's no real difference between a 9-day early worker, because they're contractual, versus Michelle and even those that I hire that are come out of my office. I want to make sure that's understood. They're not an employee, because I can hire anyone for my welcoming board. That's also a separate. So whichever way you would like me to do this, we can do it. But I really do hope that those workers do get paid.
And I don't think it's so much of breaking out the 9-day early voting specifically. Any reimbursement for any election worker, I believe is that what you are asking? That if we're
I know
paying.
there's a way to do it and keep it clean. In Parks and Recreation, even in Isabella County, we have, part-time people, seasonal people. And the ones that work at Herrick are in a different account. The ones that are working for Coldwater are in a different account. I mean, they're all broken out.
Payroll.
And when I've gotten grants, I can go to that and get that information out.
Mhm.
I just think we need to follow the Budgeting and Accounting Act. And if we think that we're not having to do that, I think we need to get an opinion from Treasury on that. But if it's a payroll or contractual, it needs to go to that as an accurate reflection and give whatever accounting setup necessary to make it easy for the clerk to be able to draw those figures out to get the reimbursements.
Well, we'll look at two things. One, you have the dollar amounts are increasing because of 9-day voting. You're getting more reimbursement money.
Yep.
So there's more money in there. Okay, that's gonna fall for the folks in the public who are gonna be scrutinizing our records. This will start to look a little unusual if you see 1 year where printing and binding is X and then it's 10 times X. And all this money is getting spent out, that's gonna look a little off, gonna start raising questions. So given the level of scrutiny that we're under regarding our budgeting and our audits to the dollar amounts that are flowing into this account now, I firmly believe it should be separated, should go into a reimbursement contractual line of some kind. So that way it's accounted for. If somebody comes along and looks at it, they can see, okay, yeah, it's for 9-day voting and not for printing and binding. That's just my opinion.
I guess that gets confusing because 9-day early voting reimbursements the same as being reimbursed for Michelle and all them too. So
They all go into one.
it's something that we can discuss and make our decision on. But I'm in compliance with everything unless you
good
can
now.
find a statute that says we're not, so.
It's been you're doing this since the Mrs. Joyce era, so
Even.
before that, Back to the
Yeah, we're
crowd
going all the
era.
way back to
Wow.
C. So I don't
Okay.
mind changing it.
Okay.
We'll just work together and figure out how accounting can help me do that for you guys.
Does
Thank you.
that make it overly complicated?
No,
No.
no, it's
Okay.
not, it's not overly
Alright.
complicated. I just,
I don't know how necessary it
the-
really
We had
is.
to figure out.
Right,
whatever
and
I have to
just
do
the-
first.
you know, if it's being said that we're in violation or of the Accounting or Budgeting Act, that's
That's
as,
different.
That's
as the
different.
finance director, as the
Mhm.
accounting, that's a little, it's,
Concern.
yes, yes.
Sure.
So, but we will get it broken out.
Just let me know when you're ready.
We
and
wanna
we'll
see.
Figure it
Yep.
out.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thanks, ma'am.
So then we can move payments on this, and eventually we can expect that there'll be a budget amendments within to rate everything.
Yeah, but it's not budget amendment well, it might be an amount they have to.
If they want
Yeah.
something moved to a different, if something's
Line
gonna be moved to a different line item, I need to take her budget that is in her printing and binding, if that's
Okay.
accounting for everything, and break that out accordingly. So, yes.
This is budget amendment for it.
It's
Unless
just
it's
doing it
under
a
the
little different way.
50,000.
Okay.
Any other questions on the November 8th list? With that, we'll move those forward. Let's see what we have here on the next page. Call the public.
Part of it's bringing everything to the board. You guys have cut the departments to very little. You've taken a lot of staff, so you're gonna, I don't think you understand the magnitude, and I think we do need a policy on this terms and condition, because everything has a term and condition. If I order online, it's a term and condition. I'm not even gonna be here, but I'm trying to get you to understand what you're saying here. Those licenses every year are $500 each. Why would you want to see that? It's in our budgets. It's put in our budget line items, in our contractuals, spelled right out.
Mhm.
I mean, I understand there should be a dollar amount. But I have to say, you've already cut our staffs. And ours has always been cut, but to make them come in front of you all the time for these, and you gotta define them, because everything is term and conditions, no matter what. I have typically signed for what she brought forward, because it's a license, we're running the software, we need it, okay? It's $500 a person. We're not asking for much. We went through the budget process to get this money. Why are we coming back? And you're gonna be seeing everybody, and that's a lot of time and a lot of slowness, and it just, to me, doesn't make sense. So I did want to come forward and say that, because I think you're going backwards instead of forward, especially with cutting everybody. These are simple things that are already put in the budget that are right there for you to see. I'm just bringing that forward, and then there is going to be some, I don't know if you guys know about it, but the road patrol has generated a lot of interest coming to the board meeting, this next meeting. Just on the heads up. I mean, they're hurt. I mean, the whole department's hurt. There's tears. It's, and I'm just bringing it to your attention. It seems as I work there and in the middle of it.
Yeah.
Anyways, thank you.
Thank you. I think the comment about maybe having some kind of a policy on maybe setting a dollar amount. Because I know in Parks and Recreation, you got agreements for trash pickup. I mean, there's a lot of things, and I don't think we want all that coming before us, and we'll need to, maybe the next committee meeting, look at a policy recommendation.
Right, could you do that? Put something together for us?
No.
Not you, but someone will.
Not by, unless you want me to put the wage study aside that we're
No.
working towards,
No.
and the opioid policy aside we're working towards, and the donation policy aside that we're working towards, and the medical examiner contract that we're working. I have a couple of things to wrap up this next round. I tried this round, it didn't happen. But no, I don't physically think that I can do that.
It'll be a new headache for the next.
I'll put it on the list for the new person.
The point well taken.
Scroll.
Too many small things that it would just really bog us down to. Any other call to public?
I'm just gonna second basically what Michelle said. And it's not that the board is not seeing it and looking at it. We put it in our budget. When we do our budgets, we have a contractual sheet that's separate, that's provided, that spells out exactly what we're spending money on and where we're spending that money. So to set some sort of a threshold would be great, because you're seeing it. You're saying that you're not seeing it, but you're actually seeing it in the budget process. You're just not seeing it when we go out to bid for it or when we have to renew that contract. So I would suggest some sort of a
Policy.
policy.
With legal, where legal review is required, you know, that
Sure.
kind of thing.
Yep.
Cause that's
Yeah,
part
yep.
of why it
Yep.
comes to a public. like-
Helps us be expeditious in our process, because we have many of those that come every year. And boy, we get down to the last minute on some of these contracts. You'll see contracts. Matter of fact, I think this one actually expires out before it hits you guys, and that's because we have to wait to come to the board meeting. So I think having some policy would be great. And then the second thing I would say is, with regard to the construction of the new building, the cheapest is not always the best. I'll just leave it at that.
Any more public comment? Hearing none, we'll move to announcements. Are there any announcements?
We've got a meeting tomorrow to interview our two candidates for the administrative controller position.
Here at 3.
Right,
O'clock it starts.
two very good candidates.
Believe so. Looking forward to it. Yes, sir.
Hearing nothing else, we'll adjourn the meeting at 12:35.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. Did you learn a lot today from us?
All kinds of things, so.